Okay, I felt like I needed to wipe off my camera again because I was like, why did it look fuzzy? But there's more clarity, so that's interesting. So now we're gonna look at, I have my 2 jars of water. Sorry, one moment. So this is my pencil. I need to sharpen it. But here's a round, not one of my favorites. Here's an angle brush. Here's a flat. 2 rounds. This is a round. That's a filbert. And these are also 2 rounds. You see, a lot of these brushes are really old because you can tell how worn away they are. Then we have my palette. So starting with the far left, that's Burnt Sienna. The brand, so this is all watercolor except for the white. The white is permanent whitewash. But, so this is Holbein Burnt Sienna, Winsor Newton Red Deep. That is Holbein Raw Umber, Holbein Lilac, and Holbein Davies Gray, and Utrecht Permanent Whitewash. So this is my palette. It's old, and I cleaned it off. So typically, like if you have this type of palette for watercolor, these areas are going to be for structuring your palette, putting the small amounts of watercolor in here or watercolor and gouache. And then you use the bigger wells for making mixtures of color. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm working on a pad of Fabriano paper. It's 9 inches by 12 inches, and as you can tell, it's cold pressed watercolor paper because you can see the indentation. And the next thing I'm going to do is rather than starting with the environment, and I just don't want to block, I want to be specific and block in. So here, let me show you. I'm dipping only, here, I want to keep it balanced, the tip. I only dip the tip in water. So now I'm going to grab that Red Deep and I'm going to put it there. So this is watercolor, but see how sticky that is? Watercolor is not supposed to be that way. So then I'm going to clean off my brush. You can dry your brush off to the side, or you can dip it in, not dip it, you can dry it off on paper towel, both ways. So again, only the tip. Okay, this just needs a teeny bit more water. So again, we're going to dry off, pressing my brush up against the edge of the jar to also dry it off. And again, only dipping the tip. See how I mixed it? So let me get more of an aerial view of that. So there, this is good. See, it's a saturated color and it's fluid. And the reason it keeps breaking up is because I keep going like this. I'm mixing it extra when I don't need to. This is a good amount of water. It's a pool of saturated color. So that's how you make saturated color. The more water you add, see how you control the water is only dipping the tip of the brush in the water. And just being really mindful and feeling the pigment as you're putting in the water, and you're looking too. But see, that's a saturated color. It's not diluted. But I'm going to add another color to it. So I'm going to dip again, only the tip. And I'm going to take some Burnt Sienna and I'm going to mix it in. Now, it's a little thick now, so again, we clean off, dry off to the edge or dry it off on paper towel. Again, only the tip. Okay, this is good. Still a saturated color. Now it's not as bright because with that burnt sienna, it toned it down some. So now I loaded my brush. Let's go here to, see that? That's a watercolor bead. And now I'm gonna fill this shape in. Like that. No, Dean, please down. Okay, so now, if I want to make a lighter value, I'm going to take, so I took from that well, and I'm going to put it in this well. I'm clean off my brush. I dip the tip of the brush in the clean jar of water. Now see, that value is lighter than that value. It's very subtle. So I want a little bit of that light value because I'm looking at, oops, gotta turn back on. I'm looking at this area. See how it's a lighter value? Now that, I don't want wet into wet technique, so I'm being very careful about applying it because I don't want to blossom. Okay, so we're going to let that dry just for a moment. And then, okay, now we're going to move on to another color and using another brush. So I'm going to start with some things in the foreground, then I'm going to come back to the chicken. So again, only, like I've been saying with gouache too, same with watercolor, for water control, only dipping the tip of your brush in water. And now I'm going to go over to the burnt sienna. See how sticky that is? Shouldn't be that way. So that means you need to add more water. So now I cleaned off my brush, drying it off, dipping only the tip in the water, and I go like that. But now I want to put another color in there. So I'm going to clean off my brush again because we want to try and keep the color pure. I have a little bit of water on my brush, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. So I'm making this. So I added some lilac and some burnt sienna. I made this pretty peachy color. I'm going to keep that because that's going to be good. But what I want to do is take a little bit of that mixture, put it in another well. And I'm going to, well, got to clean off my brush first. Again, dry it off on the side. Take a little bit of the Davies Gray. Mix it thoroughly. Okay, great. So there's some light areas and there's some darker areas in here, and I want to block the light areas, and I see them as being linear. So there, I did a linear application here. I'm going to do linear again. There, linear. And see, this is a wash. See how that's a wash? And you can make even a lighter wash again by taking that color mixture, putting in another well, and adding more water to it. See how that's saturated, especially that part there, and this is a little bit heading towards being a wash, but it's still a saturated color. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is, actually some of that color's in the chicken too, so I might as well. So I'm noticing that there's this pretty like little part of her fur, or not fur, her feathering of this hen has that shape. And then that. So you could also draw with your brush. You don't have to, what's the word? You don't have to lay down. See, there's a watercolor bead, but see how I'm still drawing with my brush? Now, if you had a larger area, then you would want to put the watercolor, like if you were putting down a wash, put the watercolor bead down and then on the surface in that shape or somewhere on the composition and travel across that area. So now I'm just squinting and looking. There's a little bit of that color around here, but see, I can do linear application there. And I can go like that. So now I'm going to make a lighter wash with that, and we're going to be careful. So cleaning off again, drying off as you know. There you go. Now only dipping the tip. See, that's already lighter compared to that. And if I were to do that again, I'd take that, put it in another well, and add a little more water. So there's our light wash. And I'm going to apply this to the areas that are light, but also I want to avoid doing wet into wet technique. We're doing wet media on dry paper technique right now. I like that shape there. That's nice. I like some of my line to come through too, thinking about it. I like some of the white coming through it as well. Like, I don't want to like block all that in. I actually like that shape of that white there. So now, again, clean off the brush. I'm going to take some of that Davies Gray and I'm going to mix it in with this color right here. So I mixed it in with the Davies Gray into the Winsor Red Deep. Clean off my brush, drying it off on the side. I'm looking at the place where I'm going to apply this paint next, and this is a good consistency. And it's a lighter value compared to the other one. And I'm going to look at this part. So there's that watercolor bead. Also, I noticed there's some black too on the inside, but there's some red around the outside, so I want to put that red in there. And okay, so next I'm going to clean off my brush again. And let's see, I think I'm going to take some of this raw umber. See, sticky, not... Yeah, it's a... Sorry, one moment. Sorry about that. I want to do this. So it's not... This is not too bad, but it's not right. It just needs... Sorry. So I'm dipping the tip. Oop. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to go back. So I took some of that raw umber. And I want to go into some of these areas. So linear there. Dean, you're not allowed up here. Sorry.